Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the fourth installment of my DCEU watch through, where I'm going from start to finish DCEU, except for Zack Snyder's Justice League and Peacemaker, which are going to be at the end for reasons that I've already explained, but most of it being that I don't have Max yet, currently, right now. And I don't even know if they're still going to be on Max. I don't know. Things have been moving around. I watched the first three on Netflix, and then I just watched Wonder Woman on Disney+. Well, technically Hulu, but also now Disney+. So yeah, who knows if they're gonna be on Max at the end, but anyway, that's the way that I plan to do it, so I'm gonna continue to do it that way. Now, Wonder Woman is a movie that I have seen before back in 2017. I haven't seen it all the way through since. I don't even think I've seen bits and pieces of it in at least 4 to 5 years. But I do remember really liking this movie, and after the rewatch I did last night, I still do. It's just as good as I remember it. Wonder Woman is a movie that's beloved by fans and critics alike, and with it being the fourth movie of the DCEU, I don't think it's any coincidence that this movie and Man of Steel sit above Batman vs. Superman and Suicide Squad. And I think a big part of that has to do with the fact that these are origin stories. These are solo movies to set up characters. To this day, it surprises me that Warner Brothers executives were smart enough to give Superman his own solo movie to jumpstart the DCEU and give audiences a character to connect with and to grow fond of, and then do the same for Wonder Woman a few movies later, but decide not to do that for Batman and Flash and other big characters. Now, I know Flash got his solo movie just recently, last year I believe, but it's too late. You should have done that before. I don't understand the thought process. It feels like we decided to set up some of these characters just the way you should, and then with some, like the Flash, you tried to backtrack and do it later. But even though Flash's solo movie came too late, at least he got one. Ben Affleck's Batman never did. I know there was talk about it, but it just never materialized. Now, in the case of Wonder Woman, I feel like it was early on enough to where a prequel definitely works. She wasn't a huge character in Batman vs. Superman, but she was present, and people are familiar enough with Wonder Woman to be able to eat that and then accept a prequel right after. I do think that even if Wonder Woman was the first time we ever saw the character on screen in the DCEU, I still think that prequel isn't really the right word, but a flashback, a memory that this movie is, I feel like that's still the right direction to go in. Because Wonder Woman as a character is deeply rooted in Greek mythology and the Olympians, and that's just the story that needed to be told. It makes more sense to bring it back in time a bit. Now, as for the movie itself, I thought it was done really well. The costume design was great, the set design was great. I saw some stunts that really stood out to me in the battle with the Amazons and the Germans, and you could tell that they were actually stunts, not just CGI creations. And speaking of which, the CGI looked really good. There's a few shots here and there that looked a little off, but that's to be expected, even amongst the best CGI movies. And I thought that this movie had something that the previous two installments of the DCEU kind of lacked, which is clear, cohesive writing. Now, the story and the look and the feel of the movie really remind me of some of early Marvel movies. The movie itself reminds me of Captain America: The First Avenger, but if you plugged Thor in there instead of Steve Rogers. It's very much that, wartime movie, but also with that fish out of water element that Thor 1 and a little bit of Thor 2 had in it, where Diana is from a place that has no contact with these people, and then she's thrown in there, and she's kind of a fish out of water. She has a lot of power, similar to Thor. So to me, it just kind of feels like a mashup of those two things, albeit in World War I and not World War II. Even the characters around Diana kind of make it feel that way too. You've got Charlie, Samir, and Chief, who are kind of like the Howling Commandos, or if you want to look at it from a Thor perspective, the Warriors 3. And then you've got Steve Trevor, who's kind of like Bucky Barnes and Steve Rogers combined, all the way down to the fact that he has to sacrifice his life to stop a plane at the end of the movie. Kind of like Steve in The First Avenger. And I just want to clarify, I'm not trying to use it as a criticism. I just wanted to point out the parallel between Marvel and DC. I just wanted to clear that up before someone starts commenting that Steve Trevor came before Steve Rogers. I'm not sure which came first, but I still think it's a cool parallel. By the way, I just itched my head and now I've got a red spot right there. You could probably see it. Speaking of Steve Trevor, I really liked Chris Pine in this movie. I thought the role was perfect for him, and I feel like Chris Pine doesn't get enough appreciation. Not for this role or for his career as a whole. But while we're still in the general vicinity of the story of this movie, I wanted to point out that the Greek gods, the Olympians, just don't get enough story. Not only in this movie, but in DC as a whole, in their live action adaptations and animated counterparts. It would just be nice to see more of that side of DC. And I know we do get some of that here in this movie, and I know we get some of that in animation as well. But this is a side of DC that I find really fascinating because it is based on real world mythology and how that interacts with the fantastical aspects of magic and superheroes and whatnot. I think that's a very interesting dynamic that I wish they explored more in media as a whole. But focusing on this movie in particular, we do get some of that. We do get some about the Olympians, about the backstory. We get a little bit in like stories and whatnot, but it is unfortunate that you as the viewer know before the movie even ends that this is all we're gonna get for that side of DC. The backstory of this movie, the whole motivation, the catalyst of the plot is that Ares killed the other Olympians. So just off rip, you kind of get robbed of that whole side of DC. There's no one left but Ares, and then later you find out that Wonder Woman is also a demigod, or a god, depending on how DC portrays that aspect of the story. But by the end of the film, Ares is also vanquished by Wonder Woman, which is unfortunate because that leaves Wonder Woman as the last of that bloodline. The last of the Olympians, if you want to call her that. And to me, that seems like kind of a waste because so much of Wonder Woman's backstory and present day stories are surrounded by Greek myths, Greek legends, the Greek gods of Olympus. So by killing them all off, you're robbing future stories. And while I know for the sake of the movie, Ares was never going to survive, Diana's whole purpose in this movie is to kill him, it is unfortunate because Ares is Wonder Woman's arch nemesis. It's like if Barry killed Eobard Thawne in the first movie, or if Batman killed the Joker, or if Superman killed Lex Luthor. And so you're either left to give Wonder Woman a new arch nemesis for the purposes of the DCEU, or she just doesn't have one. But all in all, that's more of a big picture problem than a problem with this movie in particular. And to be honest, that's my only real critique of this movie, which is crazy considering that the last two videos I made about DCEU movies, most of it was complaining. On a more positive note, these early DCEU movies have kind of been like a seek and find for me, where I see an actor that looks familiar and I don't know where I've seen them before, and this movie's no exception. And to be honest, I didn't even notice for some of them during the movie. It's only after I looked up the cast list afterwards that I realized that I had seen them before, so let's get started with that. If I had a nickel for every time I didn't recognize Robin Wright, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice. Robin Wright plays General Antiope in this movie, and she's also Jenny from Forrest Gump, who I didn't recognize when I watched Forrest Gump years ago, but I knew her originally as Princess Buttercup from The Princess Bride, and that's who she'll always be to me, but it's weird that she keeps popping up and I just don't realize it's her. I've got no excuse for not recognizing her in Forrest Gump, because she looks exactly the same. It's just her voice and mannerisms in the character that's different. But in this movie, my excuse is this. It's costuming. She does look like she worked out a bit for this role, and then also she's a bit older. Those other movies that I'd seen her in were years ago, and this one was 2017, fairly recently, and so maybe that's just it. Not to mention, she does have a headpiece which doesn't really cover her face, but you know. But honestly, I think I just got Clark Kented. Put on something just slightly visually altering, and then have completely different mannerisms, and I just won't recognize you. I really think that's what happened, is that she's muscular and she's a fighter in this movie, which I'd never seen before, and then she's got something that barely obstructs the view of her face. Another person that I realized I didn't recognize during the movie, but I knew who they were when I saw the cast list, was the actor who played Samir. He was the one who sits above the table in John Wick 3, and it's not a super big role, so I'm not really surprised I don't remember his face very well, but I thought that was a cool little tidbit. Side note, I do know that the actor has a real name, but I dare not butcher it, because I will butcher it. I'll put it on the screen, and you tell me if you think I'm gonna butcher it, having never heard it pronounced. Now, Lucy Davis, I definitely knew looked familiar when I watched this movie, but again, couldn't place her. Come to find out, she's Diane from Shaun of the Dead. That's where I know her from. She's also been in The British Office and Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. I do also now recognize her from the poster of The British Office, but I haven't seen that or Sabrina. I do want to watch both of those one day, but it's just something I haven't gotten around to. But I thought that's cool. She's been in some stuff that I've heard of, stuff that I want to watch, stuff that I have watched. Now, as we come to the end, I want to mention David Thewlis? I don't know how to pronounce his name. It's another one I've never heard pronounced, which is crazy. But he's Professor Lupin from Harry Potter. He plays, spoiler alert if you haven't seen this, Sir Patrick/Ares. And he's kind of the wolf in sheep's clothing in this movie, where you meet him and he's a friend. He's talking about peace and he's talking about all these things that you agree with, and he's supportive of you and he wants you to go on this quest to stop evil. But it's kind of like a Donovan situation from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, where he'll sponsor you, he'll send you on this journey, but come to find out at the end of the journey, he's the one that you're trying to stop. I just wanted to mention him because I like his acting, and I think it's really cool to see him in something that isn't Harry Potter. A lot of people haven't seen him in something that isn't Harry Potter, and I know he has a career outside of that, but you know, it's just nice to see him in something that's super high profile, especially considering that people from my favorite franchises, you know, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, sometimes get typecast. And sometimes it's even worse than that. Sometimes actors and actresses just can't get roles at all because producers and executives only can see them as a particular character that they portrayed in a big franchise or a big film or a big TV show. And so it's difficult for them to break out of that. And I'm just glad that didn't happen in this case. And I know that he was an adult at the time of Harry Potter. He had a career before Harry Potter, and he has one after. But I just wanted to shine a light on the fact that I thought it was cool that he could make it into something else super high profile without anything bogging him down. But all in all, this was a really good movie. Definitely just as good as I remembered it. This is one that you can recommend to people, fans of superheroes, fans of action movies. This is one that should be recommended because it's a really good movie. I know this video probably isn't going to be as long as my other DCEU videos. As a matter of fact, I can almost guarantee it's going to be the shortest. And that's because I didn't have much to complain about in this movie. I think I made one small critique about the Greek god aspect of DC, but that hasn't anything to do with this movie in particular. It's kind of a big picture thing. And the last two DCEU videos that I made were full of complaining, so maybe I just needed this. But with all the ups and downs of the DCEU, let's see how long that lasts. If you're one of the 1 or 2 people that stuck around to the end of the video, thanks for watching. A like, comment, a subscription, anything helps. I'm still working through the DCEU. This is the 4th installment. We've got plenty more to go. If you want to join me on this DCEU watch through review journey, then stick around. This was the first time for a DCEU video that I've made a list of talking points that I wanted to talk about directly after watching the movie. And I think I'm going to continue to do that because I really am just going to forget something. There's something, oh yeah, it was the David Harbour thing in Suicide Squad that I forgot to talk about. I made a short about it, but I forgot to talk about that in the actual video, so I think I just need to start making lists. It's a lot safer. But until next time, bye.